As we dive into the intriguing world of the connection between empathy and manipulation, a troubling question arises. Why do empaths, with their intensely bright light, attract individuals who silently compete for that same light? Today, I'm going to show you how this oppressive dynamic can reveal the vulnerabilities that many try to hide. Niccolò Machiavelli, the renowned Renaissance thinker, said that humans are driven by hidden ambitions and desires. This statement encapsulates much of what occurs in the relationship between empaths and those who compete silently around them. In his key work, The Prince, Machiavelli explores how manipulation and cunning can be more effective than sheer force. For empaths, this translates into a volatile dance between vulnerability and control, where those around them may adopt roles of allies or rivals, often without the empaths noticing. A painful contradiction forms when we consider that an empath's illuminating presence may attract not only those seeking true connection, but also those who are in constant competition. Why does this happen? The light that illuminates an empath's path can also cast shadows on hidden insecurities and rivalries. This paradox creates fertile ground for emotional manipulation. Imagine the scene. Someone approaches an empath, drawn by their compassion. Yet inside, that person feels threatened by the ease of connection that the empath offers and ends up using that proximity as a way to compete for attention and validation. This generates a cycle of discomfort and conflict that may not be immediately visible, but is in essence a struggle for power. This scenario leads us to a fundamental question. How can you protect yourself from this competitive dynamic that can easily distort your purest intentions? And we will discover how to handle these situations as we continue our discussion. But before we do, it's essential to reflect on the impact that these toxic relationships can have on our lives, our emotional health, and our social interactions. So before we continue, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and also activate the notification bell. But only if you truly enjoy what I'm doing here. I'm preparing a series of videos specifically designed to guide you on your journey of self-discovery and personal growth. Now let's carry on. The intense light of empaths is undeniable, attracting not only those who seek connection, but also those who feel threatened by that same light. This complicated dynamic can lead to interactions filled with rivalry and silent competition. As we explore this theme, we encounter the relationship between empathy and power, a connection that presents both challenges and opportunities for those who possess this emotional sensitivity. Niccolò Machiavelli, the icon of thought on power and strategy, discusses how perception influences human relationships. His work, The Prince, teaches us that true essence can be a weakness for those who cannot handle it. This idea is crucial in understanding why empaths attract individuals who silently compete. When an empath's emotional authenticity shines brightly, those who feel disadvantaged may respond with distrust and insecurity. This dynamic creates a dangerous cycle. The empath, being naturally sensitive, may end up absorbing the insecurities and rivalries of those around them. At the same time, this light that should foster true connections can transform into an emotional minefield, where the struggle for power disguises itself as friendship. It is essential to reflect. How can you protect your authenticity and well-being in this scenario? One of the greatest challenges for empaths is what I like to call the Machiavellian silence. It's when someone else's lack of self-esteem manifests in silent competitions, pushing the empath into a constant state of alertness. And when this happens, empaths risk distancing themselves from their own essence, becoming overly cautious and distrustful in relationships. Therefore, this raises a practical and urgent question. How can you identify and deal with these dynamics before they harm you? How can you restore your personal power and reverse this situation? The next steps involve closely observing these interactions to understand others' behavior and the hidden motivations behind their actions. Now think about how these issues affect not only your daily life, but also your emotional health and personal relationships. Silent competition can be stressful and exhausting, but it's possible to create a space where your light can shine freely without fear. How are you dealing with these relationships in your life? This reflection prepares us to better understand the mechanisms that govern these complex interactions. The intense light of empaths not only predicts meaningful connections, but also reveals dark facets in human interactions. At a lively party, an empath can feel the contrast between ostentatious smiles and fleeting looks of disdain that occur in a brief moment. This idea of being a mirror for others' insecurities prompts a fundamental question: how can interactions reflect a silent competition for an empath's light? Let's imagine a scene. The empath is surrounded by a group amidst laughter and light conversation. However, upon closer inspection, they notice the small critiques hidden in pleasant words, a disguised gesture of disdain, a glance that quickly averts. These details, though subtle, emit a familiar echo, reinforcing the constant internal struggle these individuals face. It's as if they are in a game where vulnerability becomes a weapon, making the empath an easy target. This perception raises the question: how is it possible that some feel comfortable in a crowded room, while others, despite the noise of joy, feel alone? For an empath, this dissonance is palpable. Interactions become a minefield where the quest for validation and connection often transforms into veiled competition. But that's not the scariest part. It's important to consider that the search for authenticity can easily be manipulated. Those who feel threatened by the light of an empath may use social interactions as strategies to maintain control, leading the empath to a constant state of alertness. It's as if the energy of that empath, which should unite, also becomes a disguised source of rivalry. The tension is tangible, and one may wonder, how can they effectively manage these dynamics? What can be done when the light that should shine becomes a target for others' insecurities? When silent competition seeps into relationships, the consequences can be devastating. This doesn't just affect one individual, it echoes among friends and family, reverberating in broader social spheres. What's the trick to recognizing and redirecting these interactions before they create emotional cracks? How can you protect that radiant light without yielding to someone else's control? The answers to these questions unfold in a deeper analysis, one that leads us to explore how to navigate this challenging environment. This discussion not only amplifies your awareness, but also paves the way for practical strategies that can be applied in your life. The illuminating presence of an empath attracts genuine connection, but it also intensifies silent rivalries. This energy can become a complicated game, where each interaction hides obscure motivations. Along this path, the search for control and self-affirmation is palpable. Niccolò Machiavelli, with his insights into human desire and power dynamics, provides a powerful context for understanding these interactions. He teaches us that true power reveals itself in subtleties, and that's exactly what empaths often face. The cleverness of manipulation hides behind the mask of friendship, often leaving empaths in a constant state of alertness. When you shine brightly, you attract not only those who wish to share your light, but also those who feel threatened by it. This can lead to behaviors ranging from admiration to silent competition. Before we proceed, it's vital to understand how this constant state of alert impacts an empath's emotional health. What happens when the empath is seen not as a radiant being, but as a threat to be neutralized? This point is especially critical as it reveals the fragility in interactions where the lines between support and rivalry become blurred. When we absorb others' insecurities, it's easy to let those energies divert us from our true essence. This constant hypervigilance, this heightened attention to others' reactions, not only wears you down but can also be paralyzing. Empaths often find themselves in a vicious cycle of observation and interpretation, leading to intense scrutiny, not just of what they say, but also of what their feelings might provoke in others. But that's not the worst part. What happens when this environment transforms into a silent battlefield, where each interaction is laced with subtext and tension? The answer leads us to understand the complexity of the power dynamics that empaths face daily. The question that arises is, how can you begin to recognize these power plays before they dim your light? In this context, self-confidence becomes a crucial tool, empowering empaths to perceive and influence their own emotional realities without allowing others' insecurities to dominate them. The struggle for power in relationships is a delicate dance. Vulnerability may seem like a weakness, but it can also be an approach that helps untangle the complexities of this silent competition. How can you distill those moments of tension into confidence? The answer is slowly revealing itself. This narrative about hypervigilance and silenced competition brings us to the threshold of a deeper understanding, continuing to explore these complexities. How can you dismantle these harmful patterns and let your light shine freely? The intense light of empaths can dazzle, revealing not only the pursuit of genuine connections, but also the ongoing cycle of rivalry that permeates their interactions. This attention, often misunderstood, becomes a battleground where feelings of insecurity find fertile ground. It is a territory where many emotional games are played, and where the cunning of manipulation thrives. Niccolo Machiavelli, in his work, suggested that human interactions are filled with hidden agendas. What does this mean for empaths? It means that when interacting with those who silently compete, they can become unwitting targets of subtle and treacherous manipulations. In their quest for authenticity, this ability to connect may paradoxically place them at risk within a tense climate. Imagine an empath in a social setting, surrounded by people who seem to care, yet whose motivations may be questionable. This dynamic becomes more complex when they start to notice not only compliments, but also the small, hidden criticisms, the furtive glances, and the smiles laden with rivalry. Each interaction transforms into a game of give and take, where the gesture of friendship can quickly turn into a competition for recognition and validation. And this often silent competition drains the empath's emotional energy, generating a constant state of alertness. This reality can lead to a deep-seated doubt. Are their empathetic abilities being turned against them? When you are constantly bombarded by others' insecurities, the line between support and rivalry becomes thin. The radiant presence of an empath can, in fact, be viewed as a threat. But how do you navigate this situation? The first step is to identify the indicators in these interactions. Keep in mind that these dynamics can be subtle. You may encounter people who approach you with a smile, but are actually monitoring every response, every gesture, as a way to reaffirm their own position or validation. By focusing on these nuances in interactions, you can start making more informed decisions. Soon, this observation transforms into a shield, allowing you to maintain your authenticity while negative energies are deflected. Finally, remember that true protection comes from recognition and self-affirmation. By reaffirming your own light, you not only prepare yourself to handle emotional battles, but also become a beacon that disarms the less noble intentions around you. This environment, where emotions confront each other and vulnerability is wielded as a weapon, can be confusing and draining. But how can you begin to outline the contours of this complexity? What steps can you take to create a space where your authenticity can shine without the shadows of silent competition? This question prepares us to uncover the mechanics behind this compelling dynamic. The intense light of empaths not only predicts meaningful connections, but also reveals darker facets in human interactions. This dynamic becomes more complex when we consider how the empath's interactions can have a far-reaching impact on those around them. Empaths, with their ability to pick up on emotions, often create a domino effect that extends to their family, friends, and even co-workers. Each interaction carries weight. The absorbed emotions don't just stay with the empath, but resonate throughout a circle of influence. When empaths find themselves in toxic environments, the impact is palpable. Growing anxiety and loneliness can arise even in the midst of a crowd, suggesting that social interaction isn't always synonymous with connection. Imagine an empath in a workplace. The constant pressure of silent competitions among colleagues who may see their light as a threat creates not only emotional exhaustion, but also a stifling atmosphere. Empaths can feel this tension as a burden on their shoulders. These subtle conflicts can affect the empath's mental and emotional health, leading to a sense of disconnection that reflects in all areas of life. After a day filled with interactions, the empath might go home and find themselves lost in solitary reflection. The pain of not being understood can manifest in anxiety and loneliness, while the longing for respect and transformation remains unfulfilled. These consequences spread, fueling impulsiveness and low self-esteem in those caught in conflict, like an emotional virus in a community network. One of the most critical points to consider is that interacting with manipulative individuals can leave scars. These connections, not always positive in nature, can foster a cycle where the empath loses their authenticity, becoming overly cautious and distrustful. This dynamic makes the search for genuine connections increasingly complicated. Each time an empath opens up, the likelihood of encountering silent rivalry is present. So how can you protect yourself from this competitive dynamic that distorts your purest intentions? It's essential to develop a critical eye toward interactions, observing not just what is said, but also the emotions hiding behind words or gestures. This will allow you to keep your mental and emotional health in check, creating a safe space where your light can shine without fears. However, the question remains, how do you restore your personal power and reverse this consuming situation? The key lies in recognizing that relationships, while they can be challenging, also harbor the potential for growth. Beginning to observe the dynamics in your life can become a powerful skill. How will you enable your light to shine genuinely, free from the shadows of silent competition? This reflection can be the first step toward creating an environment where empathy flourishes and genuine connection prevails. After all, the light of an empath is not just a consequence of their nature. It is a choice about how you decide to shine in this complex world. How can you make that decision more consciously in your daily interactions? The magnetic intensity of the light that empaths radiate not only attracts those seeking connection, but also reveals the complexities of human relationships. Let's delve deeper into how this dynamic exposes the vulnerability of empaths, serving as fertile ground for emotional challenges and manipulation. Authenticity becomes, in this context, a powerful but equally dangerous weapon. Machiavelli's approach to power teaches us that vulnerability can turn into weakness in the wrong hands. Empaths, being naturally sensitive, have the capacity to feel and absorb the emotions around them. This trait is often misinterpreted as fragility, but in reality it represents a unique strength. However, this same strength can attract individuals who silently compete for attention and validation through comparison. When an empath genuinely connects with someone, that interaction can be twisted by hidden insecurities. Think about how common it is in a group where an empath is present. While they share their emotional warmth, others might watch with envy, measuring how they feel about that energy. And what happens? A silent game of disputes begins, where authenticity and vulnerability become not just assets, but also vulnerabilities. It's crucial, therefore, to understand how these dynamics manifest in relationships. When constantly forced to dim their own light to fit in, the empath risks losing sight of their true essence. This pressure can heighten feelings of distrust, leading to a hypervigilance that seeps into everyday life. Critics don't just attack directly, they spread subtle doubts that can affect the empath's self-esteem. The presence of these challenges culminates in a state I call Machiavellian silence. In this moment, the insecurity of others transforms into an environment of silent competition, where connection dissolves into distrust and fear. Interactions, instead of being genuine, become calculated strategies, revealing an emotional complexity that many empaths feel compelled to ignore, even though they are essential to their emotional survival. So how do you navigate these stormy waters? The answer lies in awareness. Recognizing that this dynamic of competition isn't a personal failing, but a hallmark of human relationships. This perspective can serve as a protective shield. Now consider this. How do you act when these power plays begin to unfold? This recognition is the first step toward creating a defense that allows the empath to establish healthy boundaries and strengthen their authenticity. Have you ever wondered if the relationships you maintain are truly genuine, or if they are laden with this disguised competition? Reflecting on this can lead to a powerful transformation. In the moments to come, we will delve deeper into this question, exploring how to empower yourself and maintain authenticity, even amidst silent rivalry. As we consider the internal struggle of empaths, the intersection between their light and others' silent competition becomes more evident. This insidious relationship can lead to interactions that masquerade as friendship, but are filled with underlying insecurities that frequently affect the empath's emotional health. Now, reflecting on how to break this cycle is essential. What we can learn from Niccolo Machiavelli about social dynamics is that perception and emotional control are powerful tools in any human interaction. In his analyses, he emphasizes that weakness often hides beneath the surface of appearances. In the context of empaths, this translates into a scenario where they are not just observers, but active participants in a game where others may see their light as a threat. This creates a conflict that can be silent, but is no less potent. Why does this happen? The answer lies in human emotions and the ambitions many try to hide. When an empath shines, they not only attract those seeking connection and understanding, but also those who fear being overshadowed by that light. This constant state of alertness, where the empath becomes aware of the energies around them, feeds a cycle of discomfort that can manifest as anxiety and isolation. So how does this struggle for emotional validation unfold in an empath's relationships? By absorbing the insecurities and rivalries of others, the empath feels they must constantly defend themselves, becoming a mirror that reflects the imperfections of those around them. The critical question becomes, how does this impact how empaths relate and protect themselves? This situation creates a domino effect, where an empath may distance themselves from their most genuine truths in the attempt to conform to others' expectations. And what happens then when this dynamic transforms into a cycle of alertness and distrust? A pattern of competition arises, leading to the weakening of true interactions. But that's not the worst of it. The emotional strain an empath faces when dealing with these tensions can lead to loneliness, even when surrounded by people. This scenario raises an essential question. How can we interrupt this vicious cycle that can intensify in our social circles? In this reflection, many empaths may find their path to restoring authenticity. How can you begin to establish your own boundaries to protect your essence without giving in to power struggles? This is the key to not just surviving, but thriving in the tense atmosphere that permeates these interactions. The answers to these questions are essential for the empath seeking a space where they can shine freely. How do interactions shape your emotional life? And what steps can you take to create a safe and welcoming environment? These considerations are vital for understanding the complexities of relationships in the world of empaths. How can empaths protect themselves from harmful interactions that turn their intentions into silent rivalries? This is the question that needs to be explored.